My name is Angelo Umali. My slides have went all the way out there. And I'm going to be talking about the challenges of wearable devices and creating a wearable device. So also I have this challenge of being the speaker right after lunch. So I have to keep you guys awake for the next 20 minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce myself really quickly. My background is in electrical engineering. I worked for 9 years in industry before doing a startup. And I have bachelor's and master's degree focusing on wireless communications in the United States. So my company moved me from Silicon Valley to here 4 years ago, my previous company. And that was Agile Technologies. So I was in charge of the wireless communications division and managed the product, the whole division for Asia. And when I quit, I had this hobby of, not hobby, but I have a side job of being a photographer and fitness instructor in the evenings and weekends. And one of the things that made me really passionate was getting people healthier and getting people to move, just because movement helps with people's health and happiness levels. So that's where Simple Crossing came up with. We're doing healthcare, wearables, and we're trying to make it as simple as possible in design. I founded it last year, August, and we're based in Hong Kong, just because it's a bus ride away from Shenzhen where we get the hardware parts. Okay. So, can you think of the first wearable device? What do you think was the first wearable device? Any ideas? I'll give you 5 seconds. Fitbit? No? Yeah? Does anyone have a wearable device here? I have 2 right now in my wrist. So just 1 out of the audience. Okay. So the first wearable device was actually done by 2 mathematicians in 1961. It's a guy called Shannon and Thorpe. It's the guy who made the communications theory. So he did all this math, Shannon's information theory. And in 1961, they made a wearable device. They embedded a sensor inside a shoe that counts the number of rotations for a roulette. You know what a roulette is when you're gambling? So they tested it in Vegas, and they did not publish it until 1969. Just because of their security issues. So back then, even back then, privacy was already a big part of the challenge of creating a wearable device. And this is what I'm going to be talking about later as well. Okay? So what is wearable computing, wearable device? It's simply a wearable computer that has a specific or general purpose. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's really what it is. What do we mean by general platforms? It's a device that you could put your software into, just like a Google Glass. It's a solution waiting for a problem, basically. So they're waiting for developers to create applications on top of it. That's one extreme end of the wearable computing space. The other end is super specific purpose, just like this blood glucose meter from Metria. It's very specific. You'll throw it away after you use it. It measures the blood glucose levels for diabetic patients. It's a very important metric for those types of patients. So in between, there's a lot of different products as well. The Fitbit is actually started do you know Fitbit? Yeah? Okay. Fitbit measures your steps. So that's how they started. But actually, since they've become so dominant in the market, they've opened up their API, and they're trying to become a general purpose player. So they're trying to have other programmers develop on top of their platform. So that's how it's evolving right now. And if we look at charts, in the past previous presentations, you see all these charts going up, up, up to the upper right corner. And it's not any different from how they're projecting the wearable device market. Right now, we're in 2014, we're estimated to ship more than 100 million devices this year. Well, these are intelligence reports. But the thing that I'd like to show you is the insight that from here and then to the past, if we look to the past, this was dominated by people, the first comers, the Google Glass, the Fitbits, all of these guys, and their general platforms. It's a land grab, basically. You're trying to get as much users as possible. And the way we treat data, it's basically us providing them data, and it's a passive tracker. So for Fitbit, it's just measuring steps. That's it. It presents back the number of steps you did in a day. That's the data visualization of the past. What I see in the future is tailored solutions. All of these small companies trying to get into the market will have to attack a very specific problem and solve that. That's what my company is doing as well. So we're trying to solve a very specific problem and moving from just providing you data, a number of steps you take every day, to providing context. So it's not just, it's not just a number of steps every day that we provide you. It's, this is how many steps you did on Tuesday. Why didn't you do it again this week? So we're providing you context, and that's where I think the future of wearable devices is going to be. Okay? And the wearable device space is diverse. It's not just your Fitbits. It's not just your Google Glasses. There are smart clothing, so that measures the temperature of your body. So it, if you're running, or it optimizes the breathing patterns of your wearable shirt. There are $300 shirts out there that measure your temperature and then allows air to come in as necessary to cool you down. So it's like an active management system for thermometers. And there's also healthcare, so very specific sensors, just like blood glucose meter, heart rate monitors, all of these things that try to measure the vital signs of the specific user. All right, so what are the different challenges? I came up with these 8 challenges. These are the 8 challenges we're going through right now in my company. And the first one is design, because that's the very root of where you're engaging your users and how you're going to design from the bottom up. And when I talk about design, this is a photo from a group in Seattle, Artifact Group. They're very good with their research on wearable devices. How would you interact with your users? The basic question is, you start with the motivation. Why would your user want to wear you? So is it because of, help me perform? I want to run faster. I want to, beat 10 kilometers per minute. And that's the application being developed right now by some, fitness-related apps on top of the Google Glass. So when you're running on a trail, you see your speed right there. Help me maintain me. This is something more related to healthcare. So we have, for example, helping patients take their medications. That's one big problem in the United States, because the #1 reason that people get readmitted to hospitals in the United States is because they don't take their medication. So that's a $300 billion problem. And for this specific user, not necessarily they don't want to be seen wearing it. What if you're an HIV patient? You don't want to be wearing it, hey, I have HIV. So you want to be invisible. So you want to start with the motivation of why your user wants to wear it. Third one, for example, I want to be part of a tribe. So this is where the Nike Fuel Band comes in. You have points that come in, or you're part of an elite group of runners. So this is a part where you have to find the motivation of your user, your target user. And from there, you'll look at the different design decisions. Are you going to be visible or invisible? Is it a fashion statement, or is it it's just utilitarian in nature? You also have to get into the user's daily routine. How are you going to integrate into that so that you don't get forgotten? Because your wearable device, you want to be worn. You have to be able to be remembered all the time. And how does the user get the data out of it? Is the user going to look at the screen on the device, or is it going to activate a specific mobile app that displays it to them? So all of these they all boil down to the motivation of the user. And lastly, as we go from last generation's wearable devices to the next generation wearable device, how are you going to go from us to it to us? So basically providing context to the users. That's the challenge of the creators of wearable devices today. And then technologies. How are you going to connect to this device? Are you going to use Bluetooth? Are you going to use Wi-Fi? Are you going to use 3G? In some cases, it's a combination of both. For people who want to conserve energy, Bluetooth is the choice. For those who have no Wi-Fi reception, for example, if your target users are elderly people who don't have Wi-Fi, you may want to rely on 3G instead. Or if you just want high data connection, if you're transferring video, you might want to use Wi-Fi. So these are decisions you have to make. And which data are you going to acquire? There's accelerometers out there. These are the ones that measure movements. These are the ones that are on your trackers. They measure the acceleration in XYZ components. Heart rate monitors that track how fast your heart is beating per minute. And if you want to be specific, you can look at temperature, pulse oximetry, blood glucose levels, all these things. And you may even want to have a photo sensor, like a wearable camera, There's a wearable device now that takes snapshots of your life every 30 seconds. It's actually pretty cool. You wear it as a clip, and it watches your life, and takes a snap every 30 seconds. So it really boils down to the motivation of the user, and then from there you build up on which sensors you want to add on. Third is power. You could go from 30 seconds power life, literally. If you use Wi-Fi and a tiny battery, it lasts 30 seconds. You can go from 3 days to 2 years by using rechargeable batteries. Every 3 days you recharge it, or you have just one battery that you'll be putting in physically every 2 years. So this is a design decision that you have to make. Or, the next generation of batteries, there's actually the research done in Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. You could have solar batteries embedded into your clothing. So when you're running, the hotter it gets, the more it gets charged. So that's a pretty unique system, but it's still in beta stage. The other one is a kinetic one. So the more you move, the less you will be charging. So it's another cool thing that they're coming up with. So these are the next generation of batteries, and it depends on what you want to do. But for simple crossing, we're just going to be looking at rechargeable batteries. And hardware prototyping. Just a quick check of hands. Who has a hardware background here? 5%. Software background? 20%. Business background? 25%. Design background? 2%. All right. So my background is in hardware. So when we were prototyping, it's actually much easier now to create these devices into prototype because of Arduino boards. Who has heard of Arduino? Yeah, you can literally just code and bring together pieces, and you have your first prototype. And this is how one of our first prototypes looks like. I coded it in 30 minutes. It's just you put things together. It's like, oh, it's working. Then you move on to the next stage, which is miniaturization, which is a lot tougher. There's also industrial design, the Fitbits. You have to be able to design this using 3D printers. You have CAD, automation, all these things. You have to think about this, and it's not cheap. If you don't have this expertise and you outsource it, you have to pay some precious dollars for it. Software prototyping. I'm a bit embarrassed that I only put this up in one slide because this is a huge component of wearable devices. But in software, what you're trying to do is, are you going to be putting your data on the web or in a mobile app? And if it's in a mobile platform, is it going to be in a mobile, tiny space, or is it going to be in tablet form factor? These are decisions that you'll have to make because the back end, whether it's mobile or native or web, there's a lot of IT architecture that you have to consider. And it takes at least three man-months to get the basics, to get the MVP, the minimum viable product, to get your product rolling. So for us, right now there's two of us in the company. I hired one of my former high school classmates to make the back end, so it takes him a while to get to it because it's not easy. It's not one of those things that you just go to the web and download something and play. And then dealing with privacy. Google Glass, I'm pretty sure this will be banned in Vegas, given how you can look at the frequency of how fast the roulette is going. It can calculate that very nicely nowadays. And there are some states that ban their drivers from using it because they get distracted. Also in restaurants or in some clubs, nightclubs, because you could take photos of those people who don't want to be seen. That's going to be very critical in the future. So those are some things that you have to think about. Are you going to be going with a platform that has privacy issues? You have to think about that. Second one is if you're trying to attack the medical market, there's this regulation in the US called HIPAA. I forgot the meaning, but basically it's a standard that says if you're going to be taking data from the user, you have to be able to destroy it and to be in a certain way, in a certain process. You have to be able to take care of the data that's being entrusted to you. And there's a very strict regulation nowadays. And even your simple mobile apps, when I submitted our mobile app to the App Store, they have all these questions like, oh, you have to be able to check if they would opt into these specific choices you're asking them to give you. So all these things, there's privacy that has to be baked into the timeline of your development process. So that's actually going to take it longer because the QA, all these things, you have to put it in there. 5 minutes left. And customer testing. I put this graph up here. Simply, you have to get out there. because you're creating something out of nothing as a startup. I'm in a startup. And you have to be able to put it in front of customers and be able to test it as soon as possible because you don't have money to keep on changing it over and over and over. You have to be able to find your first customer who's willing to pay. Customer is not user. User is very different from customer. If they're willing to pay, you found your business model. You start from there. And that's the struggle we're going through right now. And next Thursday, I'm going to be visiting our first ever customer who wants to test our product. And then getting it out the door, it's very different. So you have to look at the sales, the marketing, distribution, delivery for hardware, which is very different from software. I mean, if you want to do B2C to consumer, you can go to Kickstarter. That's a very fast way of getting awareness. Or if you go B2B, you have to sell it to the hospitals, to the governments who would buy your system or your product. And then software is easier, but then also software, it's hard to justify paying for it. But hardware, all these things you have to bake into your gross margins. The quality control, the manufacturability. You know Pebble, the wearable watch? It took 18 months for them to ship that because it was not designed for manufacturability. This is why I based my startup in Hong Kong so that we could go to the factories in Shenzhen every day to check the quality, make sure it's manufacturable. And all these things, you know, the out-of-box experience, all these things that you don't have to deal with in software, you have to deal with when you do wearable devices because it's hardware. All right, so those are the challenges of creating wearable devices. I flashed through them. I apologize if I went through quickly. But these are real problems, and they're not easy to solve. And what are the rewards? You know, maybe you would be acquired, but very slim chance nowadays for hardware. But with risk comes very reward. So hardware is riskier, which means that if there's a reward, the potential is much bigger. Look, just imagine if you're able to solve a problem, make a dent in healthcare, for example. That's a big thing. That's something that I want for Simple Crossing to have. And if you're able to create something that your customers love, that's way better than being able to say, oh, I created Instagram. Oh, I created, these software products. It's much better to be able to hold the product you love. And, the learning, the satisfaction that you get from giving it all you've got, that's something that's, to me, which is why I started this startup in the first place. So where are we for Simple Crossing? We've miniaturized our device into something smaller than $5 coin now in Hong Kong, and we're targeting 1/3 of this size so that we can bury it inside the band. And what we're doing is we're targeting medication adherence, the $300 billion problem. Our goal is to make people move and then make sure that they take their medications. Because they're correlated. The more you move, the better you become. And the better that you are, the more you'll be moving. So it's correlated. So that's what we're trying to explore at Simple Crossing. We're going to be testing it with the first customer. I'm going to be flying to the Philippines. There's a healthcare, it's a hospital group that wants to test it. So yeah, we're making some progress. So I invite you to join us. If you are in the healthcare industry, I'd like to talk to you. If you're a designer, we need some designers in the team to help with the band and the software. And we're looking for distribution partners, investors, angel investors. All of it right now is being funded by my photography and fitness instructor funds. So all of those that I teach, the classes I teach in the morning, buy the chipsets that I pay for in the afternoon. So if you're an angel investor, I'd like to talk to you as well. So yeah, so keep in touch. Thank you very much.